She had always sensed there was something wrong between them. Having finally received validation, she felt relieved. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. After 5 years of marriage, Marissa Jones was deeply in love with her husband. His relationship with his mother was always off. It seemed he was always canceling plans with Marissa to spend time with her, and she couldn't figure out why he did that. Marissa became interested in their relationship one day and decided to investigate it further. Her first step was to go through old family photos and videos, hoping to find some clues. She broke down in tears when she discovered what she had found. It was impossible to find any pictures of her husband with Marissa because there were so many of him with his mother. They were rarely photographed together. It caused her husband to become defensive when she approached him about it. His mother was a very important part of his life, so he told her she was just being paranoid. There was nothing Marissa could do. The feeling that she was losing her husband to his mother was unbearable to her, and she couldn't figure out why he couldn't see it either. Having lost her way and feeling alone, Marissa sought support from friends. Her friends encouraged her to investigate why her husband was so close to his mother. In order to find out more, Marissa dug deeper. She wasn't prepared for what she found. As his mother tried to guilt-trip him into spending time with her, even at the cost of neglecting his own wife, she feared he would lose his marriage to her. There was, however, something much bigger at work. It was then that Marissa found the receipt she could not believe. In spite of spending thousands of dollars on his mother, her husband would not even take her out to dinner. It was time to confront him. Marissa's receipt shocked him when she showed it to him. Despite his honesty, Marissa nearly collapsed to the floor in tears when he explained what it was for. In her heart, Marissa Jones had always wanted to settle down, raise a family, and bask in the warmth of marriage. When she was a child, she lost herself in the fanciful reveries of a knight in shining armor, sweeping her away from the mundane existence of her childhood home. She became increasingly desirous of a fulfilling life as she progressed through high school. She had no idea fate had something special in store for her. The day Marissa met her soulmate is still vividly in her mind. Her friends had bailed on her, and she was waiting alone at a bar. It was a typical evening for her. The bartender had been nursing her drink for hours, and Marissa was contemplating whether to leave. In the midst of getting up and leaving, a man took the seat next to her. His charm and good looks immediately captivated Marissa when he introduced himself as Tom. During their hours-long conversation, they shared stories about their lives and interests, as well as their future goals. The chemistry between them became evident as the night wore on, and Marissa knew in her heart that Tom had something special to offer. Tom and Marissa began going on dates over the next few weeks. Tom was the youngest of 4 siblings, and he grew up holding his mother's care in high regard. Tom was left to care for his aging parent alone after all of his siblings moved out of the country. Marissa admired Tom for his selflessness despite the challenges he faced. As they continued to date, their connection grew stronger, and Marissa knew that she had found someone truly special. Marissa felt that they were meant to be together and nothing could ever tear them apart. However, their blissful love affair was interrupted when Tom asked her an important question. Marissa had no idea what was coming, and she was about to find out that their relationship was not as perfect as it seemed. Tom and Marissa had been dating for a few months now, and their relationship was going steady. But something was going to happen that no one expected. Tom's mother was another story. She lived alone after Tom's father passed away and seldom left the house. Tom had been her primary caregiver, but he often found it challenging to balance his responsibilities towards his mother and his relationship with Marissa. One day, when they were out on a walk, Tom turned to Marissa and asked her a question that carried a lot of weight behind it. He asked her if she would be keen to meet his mother. Marissa was taken aback by the question, but felt that it was the next important step in their relationship. However, things wouldn't be exactly as she expected. Tom's mother had been struggling with depression and anxiety since her husband's passing, and she wasn't the most hospitable person. Marissa quickly realized that she had to be patient and understanding towards Tom's mother, and it would take time for them to develop a relationship. Tom drove Marissa out to a remote-looking location. It was past the built-up areas in town and even further than the residential ones. Finally, at the top of a large hill, Tom stopped in front of an old ivy-covered gate. Tom had to manually open it before driving up an old cobblestone path, and then finally, they were at their destination. But what Marissa saw, she couldn't believe. After Tom parked the car, he opened the door for Marissa, and she stepped out, but she couldn't believe what she saw. The couple stood in front of an enormous house. It looked a little run down, but it must have been worth a few $1 million. Tom didn't seem to think twice before walking up to the door and unlocking it with the strange key that Marissa always saw on his key ring. He beckoned her inside, and she couldn't believe her eyes. The main hall had a marble floor with a beautiful statue in the center and a spiral stair swirling around it. Clearly, Marissa didn't know as much about Tom as she thought. They headed towards the east wing, passing a dozen or so rooms, including a fine dining room and ornate kitchen. Then Tom stopped at a door before slowly opening it. Marissa peered in and saw something she hadn't expected. She saw beautiful paintings hanging on every wall and an easel sitting in the corner with an unfinished painting on it. This clearly used to be an art room, but it had been converted into a bedroom. A small figure sat up on the bed and peered at them. The second, Tom's mother, sat up in her bed and spotted Tom and Marissa. Her expression changed. It went from neutral to something far darker. Marissa wasn't certain, but from where she sat, she could have sworn that she saw a glare on the old woman's face. But the situation would only get worse. Tom grabbed Marissa's hand and began walking her toward his mother's bed, but with each step, the uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach grew. Tom grabbed Marissa's hand and began walking her toward his mother's bed, but with each step, the uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach grew. But Tom hardly seemed to notice this displeased look in his mother's eyes as he walked Marissa to the foot of his mother's bed. He had a large grin on his face. "Mom, I brought someone special home for you to meet," he said proudly, but that day would not end well. "Mom, I'd like for you to meet my girlfriend Marissa," Tom said, holding Marissa's hand tightly. Marissa watched as the glare left his mother's face. Suddenly, she arose from the bed with a smile on her face. But it didn't look like she was happy to meet Marissa. She looked Marissa up and down before saying, "Nice to meet you. I'm Carmilla." But she could tell it wasn't sincere. "Why don't we head to the kitchen? I can prepare us all a nice pot of tea," Carmilla suggested. Tom smiled at the idea and began walking toward the door. But as soon as he turned his back on Marissa and his mother, Carmilla's expression shifted once again. Marissa could see a mixture of suspicion and anger behind her eyes. Marissa quickly turned away from the woman's angry eyes and began heading toward the door. Suddenly, she regretted coming over. But that day was far from over. Before Marissa knew it, they were in the kitchen, sipping on tea and eating the cookies Carmilla had baked the day before. But that was when Marissa noticed something. In the half an hour that they had been sitting around the coffee table in the kitchen, Carmilla and Tom hadn't spoken to Marissa once. They had turned to face one another and had begun speaking about things Marissa had no knowledge of. She tried to follow the conversation, but it was useless. Carmilla was only speaking to her son, and whenever he would turn toward Marissa, his mother would change the topic, pulling his arm to make her face him once again. It was like she didn't want Tom to include Marissa in their conversation. But why? She knew nothing about Marissa. How could she instantly decide that she didn't like her? Marissa began to feel increasingly anxious and left out as she sat beside Tom, who almost had his back turned to her. All she wanted was to go home. Every now and then, she would notice the way Carmilla glanced at her over Tom's shoulder. She would smirk like she could see the disappointment behind Marissa's eyes. Marissa's mind began to wander as she sat on that chair, staring at the empty cup of tea in front of her. As she drifted into her thoughts, she stopped listening in on their conversation. But as soon as Carmilla noticed, she did the unthinkable. That was when the older woman decided to include Marissa in their conversation. "Marissa, dear, have you met Tom's ex, Mandy?" she asked. Marissa was caught off guard, surprised to hear her own name being called by the older woman. She quickly turned toward her, noticing the smirk on her face. No," she responded. Tom looked visibly uncomfortable as he begged his mother not to talk to Marissa about his ex, but Carmilla continued anyway. Marissa couldn't believe what the older woman said next. "Oh, what a shame you haven't met her. She is the most lovely woman," Carmilla gushed about Tom's former girlfriend. "Oh, Mom, let's not talk about her," Tom chuckled nervously. But Carmilla persisted. "You have big shoes to fill. I always hoped Tom would marry Mandy, but I see he's moved on," she shrugged. Marissa felt awkward, unsure what to say. Tom suggested quickly, "Why don't we head out to breakfast?" Throughout breakfast, Marissa kept thinking about Carmilla's comments. Was Carmilla upset Tom brought someone new home? On the way back, Tom apologized. "Mom takes time warming up to new people. It'll get better." Marissa wasn't so sure. From that day, Marissa felt uneasy around Carmilla, suspecting disapproval. Yet months later, Tom proposed during a romantic walk. Overjoyed, Marissa accepted without fully realizing what she was marrying into. Their wedding was lovely, filled with family and friends. However, Tom's stepsister, Angie, whispered an unsettling warning, "Watch out for our mother." It left Marissa anxious but determined not to overreact. Initially, married life was happy, but soon Tom started arriving home later, frequently visiting Carmilla. Marissa found his closeness to his mother excessive, wondering if Carmilla's large, enticing house had something to do with it. Suspicious, Marissa decided to investigate further. Weeks later, while Tom was inside a gas station, Marissa discovered a hidden receipt in the glove box. Though faded, she clearly saw the large amount spent. Betrayal overwhelmed her. How could Tom spend such money secretly? Needing more evidence, Marissa searched Tom's emails, finding a costly parcel delivery to Carmilla's address. Her anger grew. Why was Tom financially generous to his seemingly wealthy mother but neglectful towards her? Determined, Marissa secretly installed cameras, desperate to uncover the truth. Reviewing footage, Marissa watched Tom repeatedly visiting Carmilla, carrying a large box inside, staying hours each visit. Enough was enough. Marissa confronted Tom directly, showing him the footage and receipt. "Should I call your stepsister for answers?" she demanded tearfully. Tom's expression shifted painfully. "Angie always tries to ruin things. Listen, Carmilla was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. I'm spending time with her because I don't know how much she has left," he confessed emotionally. He explained the parcel was actually a specialized hospital bed Carmilla had purchased herself. Marissa, overwhelmed by guilt, realized she'd misunderstood everything. Crying, she apologized for doubting Tom.